Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another reaction video. So recently I reacted to this channel, Estranged Parents, their original video where they talked about with this mom how her daughter was estranged from her, how she had cut her off, and some of her experience, her thoughts and feelings as she was going through that grieving process. A lot of you had a lot of thoughts, a lot of reactions to either my reactions or to what she was saying on her video, and I get that this is obviously a very emotional topic, and as she admits in her video, a growing issue for families, at least in the United States. That's what she was focusing a lot of her statistics on. And so what I'll say is this, as a channel, my purpose is never to try to diagnose anybody at a distance. I feel like that's an irresponsible thing for me to do as a mental health professional, for somebody who isn't my client, who I am seeing from one snapshot on a social media page, and just isn't the purpose of the channel anyway. So today I wanted to go back to this channel because she had posted a video about a month ago, this one talking about trends that she sees in society that she thinks are contributing to breaking families apart, leading to situations similar to what she made her original video about. And a lot of you had commented suggesting that I watch and react to this video because she seems to target therapy specifically with some of her points. And so I wanted to dive into this video today to talk about where some of her points might be valid, where some she might be skewing statistics or making arguments that just don't logically hold up, and just talking through some of the concerns that she has and whether those are valid or not. So in this video, I'm trying to engage with her ideas, not just based on her background or what I think about her personally. But there will be some things that I probably react to viscerally because this is coming off as an attack on my profession and something that I've dedicated my life to. And so I might have some stronger reactions to that. But as much as possible, I want to paint a fair picture, validate some of the concerns that she and other parents might have about the impact that therapy and mental health is having on their kids, and we'll just see where this video takes us. As always, please do like and subscribe. That helps our channel to grow. Really do appreciate your support, and let's dive into it.
Children are dumping their parents and it's ripping families apart. 26% are estranged from their dads, 6% from their moms, with 1 in 10 Americans separated from a parent or child. That's 33 million people. If we don't reverse this trend, where do you think we'll be in 10 years?
Wow, first to start with, that's a lot of B-roll already. Just that extra footage to add some flavor to her narration. I think she's trying to create a tone of fear when it comes to this, making people fearful of the things that she's listing as causes for these issues. Now, it doesn't surprise me that more people seem to be estranged from their fathers. I don't know what she's including in her definition of estranged, whether it means whether they are just separated from their fathers either by divorce, which is possible, or whether it's a conscious choice on the part of the adult child to cut off contact with the parent. So that's one part. Like, if you're going to talk about this estrangement, it would be helpful to define your terms, especially when you're using big statistics like this to illustrate how big of a problem this is.
It's not just everyday folks. Tom Cruise is estranged from his daughter Suri. Elon Musk, Cher, 50 Cent, Brad Pitt, Billy Ray Cyrus, and Rosie O'Donnell are all estranged from at least one of their kids. Is this the new normal? I spent hundreds of hours exploring this issue as I healed from my own estrangement. So today, we're going to look at some of the cultural factors, including the plight of the parent and solutions for going forward.
Actually, as she's talking about this, I'm very interested because she talks about healing from the estrangement that she went through, and I haven't looked through all of her videos, but I don't know if she documents that journey. I think that would be very interesting, what she means by healing and what that process was like for her.
Toxic parent hashtags show up over 6 billion times on social media. The biggest subreddits for estranged adult children number 72,000, and there are dozens of Facebook groups for estranged parents, the largest numbering almost 10,000. When I shared my estrangement story on YouTube, I got an astounding 30,000 comments, many from parents experiencing the same heartbreak, but a ton came from angry adult children labeling, judging, and diagnosing me with mental disorders. Is this what they teach in school these days? Or did they learn this on social media?
This is a very selective frame of reference for her to ask that kind of loaded question. Is it because of the schools, which I assume she means public schools, or is it social media? There are a lot of other influences. Maybe it's fair to ask, is it due to parents as well?
Ditching your parents is easier than working out your interpersonal issues, but is this the kind of America we want to live in, where parents are dumped when they become inconvenient? What's dividing American families? When I asked estranged parents on my channel what caused their estrangement, 59% said interpersonal problems.
All right, let's take a look at this real quick. So the poll is for estranged parents, and she had almost 2,000 people vote on it. Which of these do you think affected your estrangement the most? Interpersonal problems. I think that's fair. In a lot of the comments that I got from my past video, and I don't mean to sound like her, like, oh, I got 30,000 comments on my video, but just in reading some of the content of the comments from that last video, while there might be political differences, religious differences, or some other kind of differences, when it comes down to it, it was about the child not feeling safe with their parent, whether it was because of some identity or some political leaning or affiliation. There was some real-world interpersonal implication that made that communication or that feeling of safety not happen. So I think that's actually really on point, that a lot of these other things are subsumed into the interpersonal problems issue. I'm actually really curious if she were to reverse the poll, if she were to ask estranged children what they think affected their choice to cut off contact, what her results would be.
Other common causes include abuse and neglect, corrosive behaviors, divorce and custody disputes, substance abuse, mental health issues, different values and lifestyles, financial and legal conflicts, lack of communication, interference from third parties, perceived favoritism with siblings, and unresolved past issues.
She really seemed to emphasize the interference from third parties, so I think that's where she's going to dig into the therapy piece a little more, but we'll see when she gets to it.
No doubt, families are messy. In the past, people seem to work out their differences without jettisoning their loved ones entirely. But now what do? As this commenter suggests, they turn to the therapy industrial complex.
Therapy industrial complex. I haven't gotten my letter inviting me to that yet. Therapy industrial complex, if you're watching this video, where's my invite?
2 out of 5 Gen Zers surveyed go to regular therapy. 53% have at some point received professional mental health services.
This is absolutely a tricky statistic. I think it's entirely possible if you define professional mental health services broadly enough, you could get to 53% or even higher. If you think about if there at any point is some psychological testing for an IEP or a 504 plan in a public school, that could be considered a professional mental health service. If anyone ever has suicidal ideation, even if it's for one episode and they get screened by a crisis counselor or a local CSB hotline, that could be considered a professional mental health service as well. So again, I'd like to see more of a definition of what this statistic is actually referring to before we just take it as, oh, everyone's being over-therapized.
And more than 2/3 have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. 2/3! 36% of
Okay, I want to talk about the 2/3 as well. I'm going to stop a lot during these statistics because I think there needs to be a lot of added context to these numbers. I think the 2/3 number is meant to generate or incite fear that therapy is taking over parenting. But part of this is due to the way that insurance works. And I know I've talked about this on the channel before. If at any point you want your insurance to reimburse your mental health provider for services, there has to be a diagnosis on file. That means that if you go for an intake, even if that's the only appointment that you go for, if that professional wants to be paid, they need to have a diagnosis for you. And that means that you will be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. Well, I absolutely believe that there would be benefit to people being able to seek out therapy without being diagnosed, but just realistically in the way that our health economy works right now, that just is not very likely for most people.
Millennials have been to therapy. 19% are currently in therapy, and 39% plan to go to therapy in 2024. 90% believe more people should be in therapy. Apparently, therapy is the answer to everything. Discipline problem at home? Send them to therapy. Problem at school? Therapize them on site. These younger generations are the...
I will agree that therapy can be helpful for a lot of things, but it should not be the final solution or the final fix for any of these issues. When it comes to discipline or anything going on at school, interpersonal difficulties, family challenges, therapy can be a helpful supplement. But what I tell my clients is that I have maybe 1 hour with you each week or every other week. And each week is 168 hours. So you spend 1 hour with me, 167 hours. doing something else, maybe not reinforcing those lessons, maybe not getting community support or rehearsing those things on your own, lasting change is going to be very hard to come by. And so if she's trying to stereotype like therapy is meant to fix everything, no, it's supposed to be another step in the process of other community supports, parental help, support from friends, teachers, maybe spiritual communities, all of those added together to help a child grow and develop in a healthy way.
The most depressed and anxious in history, yet they're also the most therapized. Is this really working?
I'm going to talk about this real quick, and I hope that I won't have to pause every 10 or 30 seconds in the future of this video. She is confusing correlation with causation. So she'll talk about social media and the culture around therapy and how people are seeking out therapy, and this is the most therapized generation, but also still the most depressed and anxious. And she is trying to make this connection that, oh, this therapy is actually leading to greater anxiety and depression, and it's not working. Whereas the way that I see it, and you're free to disagree with this view of things as well, is that there's a cultural shift, whether it is through social media or the interconnectedness of phones and the virtual economy and social lives, and just a lot of other cultural factors as well that lead to a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. And this is a generation that was born into that and is undergoing a huge cultural shift in that regard. And there's a lot of stress associated with that. And to just say that because there's more therapy than there's ever been before, and there's also more depression and anxiety than there's ever been before, that the therapy is causing or contributing to or not helping with that is not very helpful, either statistically or logically. Maybe the analogy that I would use is like maybe around the time of the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s in the US, because you had all these factories employing hundreds, maybe thousands of workers, children, women, men, and they were working in cramped, unsafe, unhealthy conditions. Probably there was a much higher incidence of different infectious diseases or cancers, and doctors were probably stepping in to try to help with that. And so you might have made the argument at the time that this is the most doctored generation, if you want to call it that, but there's also more cancer, more infectious diseases than there's ever been at any point in history. And that might also be true, but that's not because the doctors are showing up and trying to treat them that suddenly these problems are expanding, but because there was a growing need, and so there was an outgrowth of intervention to try to match the need.
Of course, specific therapies for certain situations can be life-changing, but ongoing talk therapy that goes nowhere, who benefits?
Yeah, okay, I know I said I don't want to pause so much. To be fair, she makes a good point here. I am not a fan of talk therapy just for the sake of having somebody to talk to. And this is my professional perspective. This is how I was trained in my residency and in my academic program. So there are other people who might feel differently, other professionals who might feel differently. In my mind, therapy should have a purpose that should be outlined in the treatment plan. And when you reach those treatment goals, you should reevaluate with your client whether or not we're done with therapy at this point because you've achieved the goal that you set out in the beginning, or do we set a new benchmark, a new goal, so that even if we do continue, we are still working towards something productive. We are measuring change as we go.
1 in 4 millennials plans to stay in therapy forever.
That statistic is an alarming one for me. Again, I think there's a lot of context and a lot of different nuance that needs to be added to that statistic before I just take it at face value as like 1 in 4 millennials just want a therapist with them for life. There could be some people who are dealing with lifelong chronic conditions, either physical or mental health, that can have a huge toll on your overall mental health over years and years, and talking about maybe complex trauma as well. And that very well may be something that needs kind of lifetime monitoring, if you will. But generally, like I said before, I am hoping for most of my clients to look towards independence without me at some point once they reach the goals that they've set out for themselves.
Forever! 1 in 3 consider their therapist their friend. Aww. And who's turning out all these therapists for your kids? Why, that would be the University Industrial Complex. These are the colleges that charge you $200,000 for 4 years of diversity, equity, and inclusion, where they confirm that your gender is anything you want it to be, that others must celebrate your personal view of self. And if they don't, they're transphobes.
I don't know where she's getting this idea, but your therapist needs to have a grad school degree, a master's degree at the very least, in order to be practicing. So a little nitpicky, and maybe it makes her point even more, but you need 4 years of undergrad plus another couple of grad school in order to be a therapist.
Transphobes. XY chromosomes, that's old school. UCLA Medical School has a bit of a history admitting underqualified racial minorities. According to faculty members, they say the school has prioritized diversity over merit. One professor said that a student in the operating room could not identify a major artery when asked, then berated the professor for putting her on the spot. Is that who you want doing your open heart surgery? Meritocracy is out the window as colleges ditch standardized testing for screening students. Instead, they look to skin color as a primary indicator of who's in and who's out.
This is a very oversimplified take on what diversity, what equity and inclusion initiatives are about. And I'm not here to discuss the race factors and all of that, but I can see why people would have a lot of problems with the way that she's presenting it, not the least of which is that she sounds very condescending as she's talking about all these different statistics and concerns that she has.
Can you read, write, do math? Who cares? What's your ancestry? Ooh, bonus points if they were oppressed, unless you're a Jew. Nobody cares about the Holocaust. These are the universities churning out therapists to help your kids through life, to the point where the kids become dependent on these third parties who are telling your kids what? That your child is struggling with toxic masculinity and might be better off female?
That's not how toxic masculinity or gender dysphoria work. But also, I am never trying to replace the parents. I make that very clear. I don't have authority over the kid. I'm not here to tell the parents what they're doing wrong and how they can be the perfect parents. And I'm not here even to tell the kid what they're supposed to be doing. I'm here to help the family work together to discover what specific issue they are working with as a system and how to find a solution to that together. So a lot of stereotyping in her analysis of what is wrong with therapy, what is wrong with families and with schools right now.
That your white privilege gives you an unfair advantage and therefore you must kowtow to all of the races. That your parents are clearly toxic for causing you stress, so you should just cut them off. But it's not just therapists who are suggesting that you estrange yourself from family. It's also the social media megaplex. An estimated 10% or 33 million people are addicted to social media compared to the average person. Where have I heard that number before?
It's really ironic that she's going to hate on social media and people being addicted to it when she's bragging about how many comments she got on her original video.
Teens average 7 hours and 22 minutes of screen time per day, while kids 8 to 12 years old get an average of 4 hours and 44 minutes per day. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, Reddit, these are all great places to connect with people worldwide over whatever interests you. The problem is, when people hide behind keyboards, it's so much easier to get angry, overreact, and say things to a person that you would never say to them in real life. People get upset, someone throws gas on the fire, everyone's outraged, soon the whole forest is burning, and the algorithms feed on it.
A lot of the concerns I have with social media are that it is overused, addictive, especially for young people whose minds are still forming and can be really shaped by the way that social media works, and that it can absolutely have a kind of accelerant effect on outrage and disagreement and divisiveness.
Just like that one episode of Star Trek.
Appears to be strengthened by mental radiations of hostility.
Negative headlines get more clicks. Negative content gets more engagement. Negativity keeps people on platforms for longer, which lets them serve more ads, which is how they make money. Doling out dopamine like slot machines. Social media platforms hack the human psyche to keep your eyeballs angry and engaged for hours on end.
It exists on the...
First of all, this is a lot of B-roll that is absolutely really distracting for me. But also I think it's really ironic that she's talking about how outrage gets more clicks, gets more people watching, when it seems like her channel is really built on that kind of response too.
Hate of others.
Where everyone assumes, projects, judges, condemns, often on the tiniest bit of information where outrage is the norm.
Fighting while an alien has total control over us.
So what happens when young people grow up? roaming freely in this seemingly friendly yet subversively hostile social media environment, spending years in therapy while doing so? Why, we get the weaponization of therapy speak.
Okay, this is something I'm looking forward to. But before she gets into that, I think it's really important that she is completely abdicating the responsibility of parents in all of this. Yes, absolutely, social media can be dangerous, it can be harmful, it can be addictive, and therapy can also be done poorly and be unhelpful for people. But the closest influence is not their phones, it's not their therapist, it's actually their parents. From the first day that they're around, throughout all the days that they're on their phones or at their therapist's office, their parents or parent or guardian is there in some capacity, and there's a responsibility there to set boundaries, to have rules about phone usage or even not buying them a phone, or to be having real conversations, listening to their concerns, allowing them to process their feelings, teaching them what it means to talk about their feelings and be able to process difficult emotions. If that doesn't happen, no amount of social media or therapy is going to substitute for that.
Mental health awareness has increased thanks to social media. This is both good and bad. On the one hand, this enables people to more easily assess their own situations. But on the other hand, the casual misuse of psychological terms is rampant. Labeling people as narcissists, toxic, abusers, bipolar, borderline, and more fosters this culture of superficial therapeutic language that creates a sense of othering, which leads to an overemphasis of personal boundaries at the expense of mutual understanding and connection. In her book, Bad Therapy: Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up, Abigail Schreier analyzes the potential harms of psychotherapy in detail.
That's really funny because I just picked up this book from the library. I didn't even know she talked about this book or had read it, but now I'm interested to dive into it because I think therapists need to have an open mind about the fact that we're not infallible, that there are ways that this is a very young profession, relatively speaking, and that there are ways that we can be doing better. So I want to be cognizant of that. I also don't disagree that therapy speak is not helpful in a lot of times, and that some of these clinical terms have been oversaturated in the culture to the point where they're becoming colloquial, and the strict, rigid boxes of definition that were defined in the DSM or in research articles are a lot looser now, and the boundaries are looser, and so those terms are being thrown around with maybe people not understanding the real implications of what it means when you say that somebody is narcissistic or bipolar or borderline. And again, even as professionals, we try not to define people by that one particular diagnosis. We try to see them as people, not as, oh, this is my borderline person or this is my narcissistic person. Even that is kind of an unhelpful implication of the oversaturation of therapy speak, is that people start defining people by these diagnoses when that's one thing that we were trying to avoid as professionals in the first place.
In some cases, interventions have led to worse outcomes like increased depression or drug use. Multiple studies have found a strong link between heavy social media use and increased risk for depression, anxiety, loneliness, and self-harm, even suicidal thoughts.
I have no problem with that. I think that's absolutely true, and research does back that up. That overuse of social media can have a lot of negative consequences.
There's also the questionable trend in mental health services of pathologizing normal behaviors and emotions, leading to overdiagnosis and overtreatment that can make healthy individuals perceive themselves as mentally ill.
That may be anecdotal, but it is true that, again, like I said, we have to diagnose if we want reimbursement from insurance companies. I think that is a systemic issue that we need to address if we want to decrease the pathologizing of certain behaviors, because that puts therapists in kind of an inherent conflict of interest. If someone we would consider normally healthy is coming into therapy because they want to work on themselves, but we have to diagnose them with something in order to get paid for those services. That being said though, therapists should be going into the counseling room with the understanding that we are not trying to pathologize people. We are not trying to make everything fit into a nice, neat box of a diagnosis, that sometimes behaviors are just behaviors. There was actually one kid that I was working with that was diagnosed with OCD, and the parent was reporting some repetitive actions by this kid. And we were like, is this a new compulsion? Like, are they having obsessive thoughts now? Because we thought we had most things kind of squared away and taken care of. They were in the closing sections of their therapy. And it turned out they just had like a bug bite or something and they were scratching, or they were scratching their nose repeatedly because it was itchy. And that's why we do need to step back as mental health professionals sometimes and say, like, sometimes if they're just scratching their nose, they're just scratching their nose. But hopefully that's something that's being covered in residencies as they're doing supervision and being trained to recognize that not everything has to be seen through the lens of one certain diagnosis or mental health issues.
We definitely see these social contagions on places like TikTok, where the more extreme your alleged mental illness, the more clicks, likes, and comments you get. Schreier criticizes our reliance on mental health experts over parental instincts and suggests a more balanced approach, one that encourages self-reliance and resilience in children rather than fostering dependence on therapy and medication. But what we have now, the resulting therapy speak that's everywhere online today, it's creating real divisions in society.
I completely agree that therapists should be moving towards their clients to have independence, but her stereotyping that therapists innately want their clients to be dependent on them forever is really an unfair characterization, and that's something that I've tried to avoid. Again, like I said, because of my training, I've been trying to prevent dependence in my clients. I want them to be able to finish up with therapy, go on about their lives, and evaluate if it's working for them. Great, I don't have to see you again. And if something's not working, okay, come back, we can figure it out. And we set clear boundaries on like what are the signs they would need to see before returning to therapy, because life just goes through ups and downs sometimes and we don't control all of that.
As people get angrier and more extreme, where do you think that leads? To the precursor of human atrocities, cancel culture, loneliness, isolation, and social.
Is she saying that these things are atrocities? Man, I don't even want to get into the cancel culture stuff. This is just going to be a lot. Okay, we have 7 more minutes. Let's see what we can do with that.
Social contagion. These 4 phenomena are deeply intertwined in America today. Together, they are tearing people down and ripping society apart. Cancel culture, which collectively ostracizes individuals or entities for any perceived transgression, leads to deepened feelings of loneliness and isolation. Those targeted by cancel culture can experience severe social exclusion, losing their public platform, personal connections, support networks, and sometimes even their careers. Loneliness and isolation, already significant concerns in our society, are intensified by the fear of being canceled. This fear prompts us to self-censor and withdraw, reducing our sense of community and support, which is essential for our well-being. I mean, look at me. I barely post on this channel because the haters are so hateful. Social contagion, the spread.
Wait, she barely posts on this channel because the haters are so hateful. And yet she was bragging earlier about how she had 30,000 views. I think it was like 30,000 plus comments on her original video. 1 million plus views, I'm pretty sure at this point. If she's going to cry victim of cancel culture, then it just doesn't add up, because I'm sure there were plenty of people who would have wanted to cancel her based on her original video. But she still has a platform. She's still able to post. She still has a pretty significant following.
Spread of behaviors, attitudes, and emotions through social networks plays a huge role in all of this. Negative sentiments and punitive actions multiply rapidly, often without full consideration of context or consequences, which means people spread lies fast. This collective behavior reinforces the cycle of fear and isolation, as people become increasingly wary of expressing dissenting views or showing empathy toward the canceled individuals, which leads us to stage 4 of this communal cancer. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities.
I must have missed where we got stages 1 through 3 because she jumped to stage 4, but okay, we'll follow along with her logic and see what we get.
Voltaire. I said earlier that these 4 phenomena are the precursor to human atrocities. This is not hyperbole. This is history. In Hitler's Germany, Mao's China, and Stalin's Soviet Union, authoritarian regimes exploited social contagion to spread extremist ideologies. fostering environments where individuals were isolated from dissenting viewpoints and community bonds. The fear of being ostracized or punished drove people to perform and participate in oppressive actions that they wouldn't otherwise, except out of self-preservation. These dynamics facilitated the rise of totalitarian movements, leading to widespread human rights violations and atrocities like the Holocaust, the Red Terror, and the Great Purge. Crimes against humanity. Is this the kind of America we want to live in? Because the tyranny of the fringe is taking us there. We cannot let extremists of any kind take over civilization, or it will lead to ruin. We need to turn away from cancel culture, look out for each other, and focus on what's good, versus stewing in negativity for hours and days on end.
I don't mind looking for the good in people, but this is getting real preachy and real political real fast.
We need to encourage real conversations, but with empathy, reason, and emotional resilience to meet these challenges together without destroying each other. And it all starts at home with the plight of the parent. Most parents learn parenting from their own parents and try to do better. Yes, there are many books with conflicting opinions about how to be a good parent, but until you're in it, you really have no idea how it feels viscerally to be raised.
No, I absolutely agree with that. There's no definitive handbook on parenting. There's no official training. There's no exam to be a parent. And where it becomes really difficult is that, yes, we might rationally think, okay, yes, I want to do better than my parents did. And I see now what their weaknesses were, so I'm just not going to do that and I'll be a better parent. But what happens is when we get into those visceral moments, when we're triggered, when we're frustrated, when we're angry, when we're on little to no sleep and, you know, the kid is not listening or not communicating or just not settling down for anything, that's when the rational kind of goes out the window and we tend to repeat the same cycles that we were used to or go too far in the opposite direction. And so I've seen cycles where some parents had yelling parents or very angry, explosive parents, and they're the same way when they're triggered, or they swing the complete opposite direction and they completely withdraw. They become emotionally absent instead. And so this is actually where therapy can be helpful for parents to be able to talk through the patterns that they're trying to avoid, the changes that they're trying to make, work through some tools that they can actually practice to develop the kind of parenting behaviors that they would want to model for their kids.
Raising another human being from baby to adult. It's like being in an alternate universe of unbounded love, laughter, joy, and connection, mixed with insanely difficult, head-spinning, mental and physical challenges that bring you to your knees every single day. Every day. Parenting is not for everybody, and it's okay not to go there. But if society continues in this direction of disposable relationships, encouraging kids to ditch their parents when they're no longer needed, then beyond further splitting America, who's going to sign up for having kids at all? If society applauds your children for deserting you after a lifetime of support, well, that's just another huge hole in the Jenga tower leading to America's collapse. I'm not really a religious person, but I do think those 10 commandments bring a lot of common sense to the table. They're kind of the foundation of civilization. Number 5 tells us to honor our father and mother. It doesn't say love them, it just says honor, as in to recognize, treat with respect, appreciate. Some may say, I didn't ask to be born. I don't owe my parents anything. Perhaps, but life itself is a gift. You get to be here, create dreams, and pursue them. What do you say when someone gives you a gift? You say, thank you, because someone did something nice for you. No parent is perfect. No child is perfect. We are all flawed human beings. If we can't forgive ourselves and others for what happens in life, our anger will eat us alive.
I'm still processing the 10 Commandments thing. I don't think if you go with the I'm not religious, but here's some Bible verses that back up my point, that seems kind of disingenuous to me, and I'm not a huge fan of that.
At the beginning of this video, I asked if children dumping their parents is the new American normal. Looking at all we've seen so far, I'd say yes. Disposable parents are being normalized more and more every day. But it doesn't have to be that way. As Gandhi said, be the change you want to see.
So like a lot of commenters brought up in her original video, I see the same trends where a lot of it is the kid's fault. They're just treating their parents as disposable, and that's a stereotype that she's repeated throughout this video. But we also have to talk about the parent role in that relationship, especially as the authority figure. They get to set the tone throughout much of the relationship, probably until like age 11 or 12, which is more than half of the years that you would expect for a kid to be living with their parent. And if they're not teaching these communication tools, creating a safe environment to talk about feelings, being able to validate feelings in themselves and in their kids, then there's not a lot of platform for there to be a healthy adult communicative relationship later on either.
If you're an adult who's gone no contact with your parents, you've made your choice. So, of course, explore your own path. Just like your parents, you're doing the best you can with what you know. But if you don't feel empathy for your parents' hurt since leaving them, imagine if you had kids and they did this to you. The people who raised you can be your strongest, most enduring bond in a chaotic world. Just consider reconnecting. Once your parents are gone, they're gone. If you're a parent whose child has rejected you, you simply must heal. You can choose to be miserable, clinging to the expectation of grandchildren or family get-togethers till the end of time. Or you can let go with love and move on with your life. I'll show you how in future videos. Letting go gives you freedom and puts you in a better place mentally should your child ever return. I mentioned earlier that cancel culture and social contagion are contributing to the breakdown of families. But there's something even more insidious at work in society today that most people don't even see. And I break it all down for you here so that you'll fully understand the hidden causes of estrangement in America today.
Okay, so a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions, a lot of statistics that aren't given full context, so I don't really know what to make of all of them. I am curious, for those of you who are estranged children who have cut off contact with parents, I'm curious what you thought about her plea to you all at the end of the video, when she was saying what you should think about, what you should consider, reach out, maybe think about having kids of your own that want to cut off contact. I'm curious what you all feel about that. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, absolutely. There is some basic kind of fundamental statistics about social media and therapy that I kind of agree with the sentiment in some of her points, but overall the conclusions that she draws, I don't really get those, and I'm not in full agreement with those at all. Like I said, there are a lot of other issues around what she was talking about that I think a lot of people would take issue with. I was not focusing on those. I was focusing mostly on her emphasis on mental health, therapy, and social media, and how all of those affect the family in today's culture. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Really want to shout out all of you who are in the comments, who are sharing your stories about past hurts and trauma and your experiences with estrangement from your parents, or parents who are estranged from your kids. I really do appreciate you being honest, and I want to foster that sense of community and being able to share stories respectfully in a comment section, which is very rare. So thank you all for doing that. Really do appreciate you watching this video. Thank you, and I'll see you all next time.